The review is finished, Ren. Would you like to see it?
Oh wow. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is a new character. Joker? Wonder if they got Mark Hamill to do the voice. Fuck!
Hey Professor Shadow, easy with the language.
What? What is this?
Let's get it!
Yeah, what is this f***ing floating thing?
Appears to be a YouTube comment. Apparently wants me to stop swearing. I just bleeped you out. In your dreams, comment, you are an what the fuck? Ah! Ow! Ah! What is this shit? Ah!
What?
It appears in a V-chip which is placed under your skin.
What the fuck? Okay, what the hell? Ah! Really? I can't even say that?
Wait, you can't curse. That doesn't mean I can, right?
Hey, that's not fair. If I don't get to curse, then nobody should.
That's a lot of...
Well, he raises a good f***ing point.
I think it's time to bring out the good Joe and Jeremiah's swear jar.
Oh god, that whole thing.
What are you two f***s talking about?
Basically, when the GameCube guy that you don't like was still here, he was tired of us swearing so much around the house, so he made us use a swear jar. Every time we swore, we had to put money in the jar.
We only used it for like 3 days and we kind of forgot about it.
Where is that old thing anyway?
I don't remember. After 3 days, there's probably like $2 in there at the max.
Yeah. Man, the Burj Khalifa is so majestic. I know, it's the tallest building on Earth. It's so big. But what's that thing right next to it though? So I have to talk about Project G-1.
What is that?
It's a sequel to Shed 17. Oh wait, you didn't see Shed 17, did you?
Nah, I kinda wait to go see that new Hellboy movie today.
Is it because it says hell in the title?
Maybe.
What about you, Earl?
Man, I've got better things to do.
Well, looks like another solo review. Hey, wait. I never got zapped when I said hell. Ah! So Project G1 is the long-awaited sequel to Shed 17. The movie took nearly 3 years to come out, and you can bet the hype was real. Unlike Shed 17, lots more of the development for this film was shown. We got to see more footage and trailers instead of the short clips like the Shed 17 trailers. However, Project G1 never gave too much away in terms of the story. So for 3 years, we had absolutely no idea where the story was going to go. Also, some of the things that Paul announced about the film ended up either not being true because he didn't want to give anything away or the development changed. For example, Project G1 was originally going to be a where are they now kind of epilogue for Shed 17, but it really turned so much more. Also, Project G1 was supposed to be shorter than Shed 17, which is 36 minutes long, but it ended up being almost an hour. So, was Project G1 worth the wait? Let's find out. Also, spoiler warning. We open with darkness. Well, that sure is interesting. Nothing. Jesus Christ, what a way to start a film. Pure darkness and silence that a sudden ear-piercing scream. That's how you know you made the right decision watching this. We open up in 1983 outside Shed 17. Some old found footage of people going into the shed as Keith Hartley narrates.
Loyalty, honor, respect. When you lose even one of those, you take something away from those around you. By the time they realised there was a problem, it was too late. We didn't stifle them, we didn't lock them away, we didn't lie to them. We committed the worst sin of all. We just didn't listen.
So we see Thomas, or at least his body. Here's a quick reminder in case you forgot what happened last time.
When the patient woke up, his skeleton was missing, and the doctor was never heard from again! Anyway, that's how I lost my medical license.
I think Project G1 opens really strong. I really love it when sequels start right after the predecessor. Even if the whole movie doesn't start there, I still love when we get to see things perfectly related to the new story. Just as long as the previous film actually ended on something interesting enough to actually justify starting seconds after the last film. We finally get to see that tank clone of Thomas from the last film. Sadly, it's immediately gunned down. Rest in peace, Tank Thomas.
The arms of the angel fly away.
On the 6th of October 2015, the world was reintroduced to the horrors and suffering that began on a small island off the northwest coast of England.
I don't think the documentary showed anything we didn't already know. People had just become desensitized to what had happened to Thomas and his friends.
Another aspect of this film I find interesting is that it actually discusses the previous film. Not only does this really add to the world building, but I think it's a great nod to the community of fans that Shed 17 created. Overall, Project G1's the best kind of sequel. So many sequels do the same thing over and over and retread. However, in a lot of ways, Project G1 adds so much more to the world and sets it up and really does feel like a true continuation of Shed 17. It feels less about a group of depressed scientists and railway workers talking about the cruelty they were forced to endure and all the ways science can go wrong. It really goes into more about what would realistically happen if something like biofusion did exist. It's interesting, but it does raise some questions. For one thing, why does the time jump from Shed 17 to Project G1, why is it so far? It goes from 1983 to 2018. In other words, practically nothing noteworthy happened in terms of biofusion for the last 35 years? I know the documentary changed everyone's view, but it seems a bit fishy that nobody would know or care until a documentary came out. It's not like what was going on was some secret. The media and the world was aware of what was happening. Other countries even had access to biofusion and technology that they could use freely. People were literally losing their minds over what was happening. Like literally going through mental trauma after watching Shed 17. This is brought up in the film.
Many viewers would be offered similar treatment, often being asked to illustrate what scared them and confronting it as a successful therapy. This young man began making his own model railway stories as a form of treatment.
After the Thomas incident became public, the tourist trade began to dry up. People stopped coming to Sodor for biofusion operations, and so there were massive layoffs on the railway itself.
You'd think after this Thomas incident went public and dry up biofusion business and dry up tourism, there'd be some type of investigation. Serious human rights violations happen on that island, and the ringleader just flat out disappears? If we could find Osama bin Laden, I'm sure we could find this fat Seriously, just check the nearest Bennigan's or McDonald's. Oh, I'm getting kinda hungry. I think I'm gonna go on a lunch break.
With the documentary came the public outcry and the media's need for a scapegoat.
Basically, Keith Harley ends up being portrayed as a villain after the sudden rise in media popularity. I really do enjoy how things just keep getting worse and worse for Keith as the film goes on. Kinda like my life.
I was finally given the chance to tell my side of the story on national television, tell people what actually happened, and acquit myself in the eyes of the public.
Mr. Hartley, are you to blame for the events on Sodor Island?
Well, let me tell you, I am not.
I am totally to blame for what happened to Thomas and all his friends, and I'd do it again tomorrow.
Looks like Fox News is just as bad in the Thomas world too.
Professor Sharon, did you just say sleep political?
Look, more movie! An anonymous whistleblower takes the spot of Dr. Ruth as the second interviewee of the film. We're never told who this guy is, but considering how he's a drummer with a drum labeled the Beatles and how he's in a Thomas-related production, I'm sure it's pretty obvious who this guy actually is. I'll give you like 5 seconds to guess. Okay, time's up. It's obviously Freddie Mercury.
It's only now, after I can't make a difference to those engines' lives, that I've heroically decided to speak.
Buddy, I think you're slime.
A tragic dilemma faced the scientists.
Some people were still in the biofusion process. Being in process is the last place anyone wants to be. They had to complete their procedures quickly, or they'd be left to die.
That meant turning them into the simplest form of life that existed.
Trucks, particularly the faceless ones, rarely had the brain capacity to retain long-term memory.
They were the lucky ones. I can't imagine a worse hell than being a truck. Fortunately, most of them didn't live long.
Come on, that doesn't look that bad. Just oh Jesus!
Oh my god.
How ironic to put a cross there. Anyone in that situation has been abandoned by God.
The ban on biofusion came into effect just after Oliver and Duck were looking forward to working on the railway.
When it looked as though they would be locked away forever, the Japan Railway Group offered them work on their railway.
Duck and Oliver jumped at the chance. The travel was paid for by the Japanese railway, and they couldn't wait to be there.
Unfortunately, arriving in Tokyo, Duck and Oliver would find that, under Japanese law, they weren't recognised as human beings, and so had no rights at all.
Nah, not that much different than life on Sodor. Home sweet home.
They would soon learn their true fate. They, along with other engines unfortunate enough to fall into this trap, were to take part in a sick pay-per-view event.
If there's one thing Project G-1 improves over Shed 17, it's its animation. The animation in Shed 17, while servable, has some pretty cheap looking models and stiff movements. Project G-1 is viewable at a full 60 frames per second, although you won't be able to see that in this review. It's also way more complex and detailed with its models, as well as some pretty impressive looking scenes. Technologically, Project G-1 improves over Shed 17 in every way. Another improvement this film has over Shed 17 is the voice acting. Shed 17 only really had voices for the narrators and a few of the characters, but most of the screams and intense moments had like stock sound effects. The stock sound effects did their job, but come on, like half the screams are from the old Command & Conquer games. I have those sounds saved on my PC. Also, it's a little weird that Thomas screams like a woman when, you know, she's not a woman. Guess his train balls haven't dropped yet. Project G1 has a lot more performances of characters, which just adds overall more emotion and makes for a much better film because the voice acting is actually pretty good.
The British government had banned the use of biofusion publicly, but couldn't ignore the military opportunities. Selling war to the world was too profitable.
Looks like only a 45-minute scene of Finn and Rose smashing up Hit Logistics. Also, in before Hit Entertainment takes down Project G1 because taking down videos is what they do best. Just like DHX.
Hit Logistics was the military contractor secretly tasked with continuing the work Sodor research had begun.
The first task was finding as many engines as possible.
Biofuse material had become rare, and Hit Logistics immediately recruited people to hunt down as many decommissioned engines as possible.
One was an old colleague we all called Friend. Even when he was being interviewed for the Shed 17 documentary, he was neck deep in secret government research.
Dr. Ruth, oh you. If I was allowed to curse, I'd have a choice words for you.
Really despise that guy.
Annie Clarabella and Kevin Diesel had met as rail enthusiasts, fallen in love, and gotten married within weeks of meeting.
Well, if a guy that looks like that can get a wife, maybe it isn't over for me.
The next step in their eyes was to become biofused.
It was the most romantic thing in their eyes. He would become an engine, she a coach.
I love how he just casually says it. You know, that's what all couples do. Meet, fall in love, get married, go on a honeymoon, get major surgery, and have your cells be permanently fused into parts of a vehicle in an extremely dangerous and complex process that could likely result in a painful death. The usual.
Kevin became his namesake, a sleek black diesel engine.
Don't ask me why Diesel works perfectly fine, even though in Shed 17 Mavis burned alive when they attempted to even turn her on. That's what you said. Joe, you... I hate this stupid V-chip.
As Annie's cells were being reprogrammed, they split in the early stages of the operation, and 2 coaches were created, although these twins were far from identical.
This is your brain. This is your brain on Fortnite. Oh, come on, so what if it's an easy target? It was funny.
People started to notice just how many twins were being created on the island, but the questions were brushed off or ignored.
Hey Joe, would you happen to notice that large influx of biofuse engines that look exactly alike and are practically the same person?
Yeah, it's kinda weird.
It's probably nothing.
Yeah, that's how it should be looked into. I mean, come on, what's the worst that could happen when you don't investigate suspicious things?
In an effort to deflect criticism, Annie and Clarabelle, the first 2 biofused coaches, were put into service straight away.
Everyone was very excited. No one seemed to ask about where all the organic parts were in a coach.
Oh yeah!
I don't even want to tell you what they found in the toilets.
Wait, so this whole time trains had poop?
That's disgusting.
Hit Logistics would use what they had learnt to work on duplication. A volunteer soldier could be biofused exponentially, creating copies of those cells.
Think of it! A willing human participant, not just controlling a weapon, but becoming the weapon. Able to react to danger and orders in a fraction of the time.
To maintain the secrecy of these illegal experiments, the soldiers' faces would be covered up.
How are they supposed to be able to fight and react if their faces are covered up? They can't see, for Christ's sake.
So that the only giveaway was a cry of discomfort when a vehicle was damaged or a tank shell was fired.
Hey Joe, have you noticed the tanks that are non-living things are yelling every time they fire? Yeah. It's probably nothing. Yeah, what's the worst that could happen? What, was secretly part of some big human rights violation?
But Professor Ruth wanted to take these experiments further. To duplicate his deprogrammed cells, to assimilate any biofused matter it made contact with, to assume any form of any size.
Think of the possibilities. Think of
again. Say
think of
again. I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker.
A weapon dropped into a city that can take any form it wishes and adapt any organic material it finds. Whole communities of people removed and left empty for occupation.
Or you could just use a nuke.
Stage 2 will involve the release of this material, in secure conditions of course. To release this material in an uncontrolled state would be disastrous.
There was nothing they wouldn't try in that place, even experimenting with mirrors.
Hey, that's like you when you look into a mirror. 'Cause you're ugly.
For one set of twins, the link would go too far. Whilst unseen horrors were administered on Donald, the doctors and specialists at Hit Logistics could observe in full detail the torture as an unbreakable bond with his twin would tear Douglas apart.
Oh, I should mention, we're getting to the really bad stuff now, so if you don't like that, then you should probably go.
What is it? You got it! No! Please! No!
Hit Logistics would also be seen as a welcome refuge from another threat on Sodor.
Steamies, we called them. They started out as rail enthusiasts, train spotters. They loved engines, but where was the harm in that?
Now the Steamies' obsession with engines had a new, darker place to vent their frustrations.
James was a favourite engine. Sometimes every night for weeks they'd gather at the turntable and play Spin the Engine. spinning him round until everyone had had a go.
Surprise! But sex, but sex, but sex!
Maybe I should use that clip to replace the one I usually use of the guy drinking Ipecac.
Oh my god.
Nah.
But James was always the favourite, even to the television writers.
James's driver and fireman were feeling him all over.
Bad touch! Bad touch!
I had nothing to do with any of that business. Not after the first time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
With the closure of the railways, the engines were hidden away, and the Steamies would go underground and bide their time.
Clearly they bid their time for a while, because they never show up in the film again.
And it would be 30 years and a new documentary before anyone cared. Before anyone asked, why did this happen? Where were the engines? And what can we do about any of it? With protests aimed at the government and hit logistics, the destruction of the evidence was speeded up. Unnecessary engines were being incinerated quickly and brutally.
It's like a sauna in here.
The engines we knew and loved were murdered in the most efficient way possible.
Have fun sleeping tonight.
But it would be the most insignificant death of all that would have the most devastating effect.
They'd spent 30 years together, just looking into each other's eyes, forgotten by us all, and as happy as any of us could ever hope to be.
So I guess for 30 years they didn't need any food or anything to keep their organic parts alive? Hid logistics. Did you guys just accidentally invent immortality?
As Clara was disposed of, no one but Diesel knew what happened to her twin, nearly 20 miles away.
Annie, my love, what's wrong? What's the matter?
What's happening? Annie, please. Stay with me. I can't go. I can't. Stay with me. Stay with me. No.
I'm gonna be real with you, this scene is utterly amazing. It's absolutely horrifying and sickening. The animation is great and the voice acting is perfect. The scene alone is worth the 3-year wait of the movie.
Had to get out. As terrible as seeing his wife perish was, the worst was yet to come.
Oh. No.
Diesel had blood on his face before someone else wiped it off.
Diesel would form the Sodor Liberation Front. His dream was to make Sodor Island a home for engines and other transport. The remains that hit logistics would be moved off-site to a quarry in the Blue Mountains of Sodor. 6,000 pounds of desiccated biofused matter. Its location the real mystery. And tending to this top-secret site was the only engine in the UK still being illegally operated.
Oh, we can get him to do pretty much anything we want to. A bit Bit of the black stuff.
This undercover footage reveals how Ferdinand was being forced to work, controlled by his addiction to Welsh coal.
Hey, this movie has it all. Sex, drugs, and... Wait, is there rock and roll in this movie? Yeah!
We used Welsh coal to get the weaker engines started up, to give some engines a kick when they were struggling to get up in the morning.
That is the scariest f***ing thing I have ever seen in my entire life.
Welsh coal acted as a narcotic on the engines. Prolonged use would lead to addiction and dependency. As Welsh coal addiction became a bigger and bigger problem, dependency increased on the set of the television series.
No, you'll never win first prize, Percy moaned.
Don't worry, Percy.
Oh God, stop!
One morning, Gordon was in the yard taking on a large supply of coal.
Somebody make it stop!
Increasingly, engines would cause what appeared to be accidents, but in fact were attempts to get exposed to Welsh coal. But prolonged use would result in permanent brain damage.
These faces make the ones in Thomas and the Killer Cars look normal.
Telling him to do things. Bad things.
Yes, said Gordon, I will.
Gordon, what the heck are you doing? Aren't you supposed to be dead?
Hit Logistics would later take Welsh coal research to its natural conclusion. High-speed steam engines would be pushed to their limit on high doses of the coal. As pressure from the media increased, and fearing more bad press, Project G-1 was put on hold, its future uncertain. Stage 1 stored away in what Professor Ruth called a controlled environment.
He dug his own grave, appearing in that documentary, as well as working at Hit Logistics. But he didn't see anything wrong in that. And so, just like everyone else, he blamed me for everything.
All this needs is a smartphone logo.
Smudger's story had been a children's favourite around the world.
Smudger worked on the Mid-Sodor Railway. The mine the engines worked on didn't make much, but it was enough to keep them going. Smudger was moved there because of his faults. His wheel alignment was off, meaning he'd come off the rails too often.
Unfortunately, the cash-strapped mine company couldn't afford the repairs. Their solution would be barbaric.
This whole freaking planet needs to be cleansed for its cruelty. I've had enough!
The butchers turned him into a steam generator.
Shut off from all sensation, Smudger powered the mind for many years. Alone with his thoughts, he would slowly lose his mind.
When business dried up, do you think they come back for Smudger? Did they, hell? He were left there for years. Everyone had forgotten him. In a way, it would have been better for Smudger if he'd been forgotten forever.
There's actually a deleted scene here. Originally, Project G-1 was uploaded on August 31st, 2018, but was flagged and removed. The video was re-uploaded with about 2 minutes of the film cut. One scene with James and the scene with Smudger. Basically, earlier in the review I mentioned how the Steamies disappear. Well, I don't think they contribute too much to the story, but there is one removed scene where they, do some, rape. Don't ask me how or where you rape a train. I wouldn't know, okay? I don't have any experience with that. Okay, so first what you want to do is stick your...
Sadly, for Smudger, salvation would arrive, but in the form of Hit Logistics.
Professor Ruth was still eager to find as much biofused material as he could, but Smudger had changed over time.
Smudger had remained in the same place for nearly 30 years. His organic parts were no longer just part of a steam engine. They had become shed.
Smudger and the shed were one and the same. They couldn't be removed.
Hey, no, please, wait, no, please, no, oh God, no, 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 please, wait, no, please, no, God, no, no!
I thought the fat fuck was bad. And he is. But at least he doesn't look a man in the eyes as he horribly rips them apart like Dr. Ruth does. Me too, my friends. Me too.
This would be the final act of hit logistics, closing down all their research and destroying evidence. Soon, there would be nothing left to even prove their existence.
That was what they hoped. They didn't count on one final desperate act. Cranky had been driven mad by all the things he'd seen working for the government.
Driven mad? That's like the sanest thing I could imagine someone doing in that situation. You open that facility and show the world the evil in there. And for the love of God, be careful where you're swinging that bloody thing. That was like inches from ending horribly.
Cranky's genetic structure meant he couldn't turn around fully, not without breaking the entire circulatory system to his head. Effectively, he was condemning himself to a painful death.
Makes you wonder why I didn't just use a crane that wouldn't rise up.
I believe Cranky knew the consequences, and he knew it had to be done.
But his wouldn't be the only sacrifice that day.
Oh shit. Here we go again.
You know, there were people standing on these tracks moments ago. That could also have ended horribly.
Diesel had veered into the now secured stasis container of Project G Stage 1. Opening it up and allowing the deprogrammed biofused matter to assimilate any matter it wished, and to take on any form it wished.
That tank is like Newt Scamander's briefcase or something to be able to hold all that.
Lads, I looked at the mirror. I looked at the mirror, lads. Lads.
Why the heck would you not cover up the mirror when not using it? That's a safety hazard, and clearly safety is hit logistics' #1 priority. I swear these guys are thinking, I don't get paid enough for this crap. Oh hey, I can say crap. Ugh! What the fuck? Ah! It looks like he's having the time of his life. Somehow the crane with the hook that is perfect for ripping bars off walls can't get out of this.
They were dragged into the canister.
If you guys are watching this review at night, I bet you're regretting it. We have a Godzilla vs. Kong movie coming out soon, but I want to see a Godzilla vs. Project G-1 movie.
This would be the only line of defense. But Project G1 was more than capable of defending itself, and would take whatever action was necessary.
Don't ask me how Project G1's capable of seeing without eyes.
It could now not be stopped. As it forged ahead, it became clear where its goal was. More biofuse cells, more life, more engines. It had to assimilate cells to grow, to live, to spread.
I don't know how this giant monster is more effective than our nuke, though. I mean, maybe Dr. Ruth is actually just a mad scientist who wanted to play God.
Oh, really?
Where the heck were all these soldiers and tanks 2 seconds ago? You think they would have needed them?
Realizing Project G1's destination and intent, the military provided it with what it was looking for. The last engine whose fate everyone had asked about for years.
Hey, Thomas, you're looking good.
He had remained behind closed doors, unwilling until now to show the world the monster he had become.
That wasn't the Thomas I knew. That wasn't an engine or a human. It were a creature mutilated by surgeons and engineers alike.
Unable to react to the outside world at this stage, Thomas was the last chance the military had to stop Project G1.
What a touching and emotional ending. Who would have known that this movie would have had a sweet ending? Gee, it's a good thing Project G1 was in that exact spot. That could have ended horribly.
No!
We were so close to a happy scene, then it gets ruined. I wouldn't have wanted it any other way.
A confused mind that lost everything. With his past the only thing left to torment him, Thomas decided to leave. He'd seen everything.
Wow, they actually referenced a meme and played it 100% seriously. I'm impressed.
Still say I were his only friend. The only person who hadn't abandoned him. I could hold my head up high and say,
I was
So Thomas, I guess, thought this movie was long enough and needs to end. Jesus Christ, 11 whole years? That's so unrealistic. Real life politics take way longer. Who were those 2% that were like, no, I'd rather be part of a country that denies me my rights? Just imagine if the UK said no, and we just got another revolutionary war with biofused Washington. So does this mean this documentary was filmed in the 2010s, but they didn't use footage they had until another 30 or so years?
Keith? 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 Can you hear me, Keith? Can you hear me, Keith? Stay with me now. Stay with me now. Okay, we have to shock him. Clara?
That will not be necessary.
Who are you? Who is this man? What's he doing here?
This man is in our care.
You've no right to be here.
Relax, Mr. Hartley. You are in our capable hands now.
My lord, is that legal?
I will make it legal.
They didn't even sedate him for this operation. I got nothing. The movie's almost over anyway.
Well, Mr. Hartley.
It's the fat f***. Ah!
And don't worry, Mr. Hartley. You're among friends here. This is where everyone ends up once they've become troublesome.
I get it. Jeez, that's horrifying. Well, that was Project G-1. All I have to say is...
I don't know about this. Maybe we shouldn't be here.
Yeah, come on. No one's even been here in like 50 years.
I know, but these warning signs are here for a reason.
Look, no one's actually seen an engine over there for ages. It'll be fine. What are you worried about? I mean, what could happen?
No!
Ah! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Okay, now we're done. So that was Project G-1. I don't know if I could truly say it was better than Shed 17, but that may also be because the shock is kind of wore off. You kind of know what you're in for in Project G1, while Shed 17, it was like brand new. I have to congratulate Paul for making what I consider to be the best kind of sequel. We live in a world where sequels are just the same thing over and over again, so like I said before, it's nice to see that Project G1 really took the series in a new direction and made the story and characters more complex. It could have just been Shed 17, but with more ways the engine malfunctioned or whatever. And I still would have enjoyed it, but it would have probably been really forgettable in the end, as it was just trying to be Shed 17's shadow. Project G1, thankfully, does not do this, and is really able to build this world of the franchise. I think the movie, while it has a good story, it isn't really as tight as Shed 17's story. There are questionable things in this movie, like Gordon or Diesel working perfectly fine, even though it's kinda contradictory to Shed 17. Come on! Who knows, maybe Gordon was operating off his own power instead of steam, and Diesel was like Harold, who managed not to burn up from gasoline. This movie also attempts to be darker and edgier than Shed 17, which is a tough thing to do, but I do think the film achieves this. However, there are some scenes that I feel try a little too hard to be edgy. I think this movie would have highly benefited from having a sequel. Perhaps the final chapter to the series that would expand on the things that were built up in Shed 17 and Project G1. Getting to see Sovereign Sodor would be pretty cool, and I could see a conflict between humans and engines emerging as future generations of biofused machines would have no knowledge of humans outside of whatever they are told, which could lead to biofused engines being brought up with a dogmatic view that humans are evil. I mean, after the events of Project G1, are you going to tell me that biofused engines had kind words to say about humans? Also, I'd like to see more of what the fat f*** is playing. How was he able to stay alive all this time? Was he pulling the strings? I'm not the biggest fan of Dr. Ruth becoming a villain also. But, you know, who knows. Maybe him being manipulative enough to make me sympathize with him in Shed 17 makes him a stronger villain character overall. If we're making characters end up to be malicious, I'd like to see more about Keith. Why did Thomas rip him in half and have so much anger towards him? Was it because of the media's scapegoating? Or does he have some secrets that he never told us? You see, there's so much stuff that could be used for a finale, it just would make no sense to let it go to waste. Unfortunately, a third film does kind of seem unlikely. Then again, Project G1 was only seen as a possibility at first, and well, look how it turned out. Like I said earlier, the movie is not better than Shed 17, but because of all the ways the film excels, I'd say it's pretty much equal in quality. It's honestly a very good movie that has flaws, but was not disappointing in any way, and is absolutely worth the wait. Well, I'm done. See you all later. Well, girl, you're gonna be alone for a little bit, because I'm gonna go have some fun now. I did finish the Project G1 review after all. I'm gonna go spend the next 40 hours playing Galaga at the nearby arcade. Have fun.
Go enjoy yourself. Yes, with review bot out of the equation, there is nothing stopping our true plan.